Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Nutrition Life Chat. My name is Lisa. I'm your host. I'm the owner and operator of Nutrition Coaching and Life. We help people lose fat, gain muscle mass, recomp their bodies, whatever they desire in terms of physique outcomes, as well as we help them establish a healthier, better relationship with food. Today, we are going to talk about 5 steps to a faster metabolism, something we should all be interested in or care about. Before I dive into it, I just want to remind you that we have a brand new freebie, which is called Happy Healthy Holidays. And that is going to help you or prevent you from yo-yoing throughout the entire year, but also just simply gaining weight over the holidays and then going on any kind of restrictive diet in the new year. So if you want this free resource, please just simply comment below and I will send it to you. It would be my absolute pleasure because I do think that the holidays and vacations and that sort of thing is really the culprit or crux for a lot of people when it comes to maintaining a healthy body fat level or just maintaining a healthy body all in all. So yes, I am back in Colombia last week. Oh yes, last week I had just gotten back. I do have to say that I felt like I needed, 3-4 nights of decent sleep before truly feeling like myself again after my Bolivia trip, as amazing as it was. But it was also a little bit exhausting and lack of sleep. And I could feel by the end of it, like when I got back here, I felt a little bit of a scratch in my throat. So sort of like, okay, if I would not have caught up on sleep soon and gotten back into my routine soon, I probably would have gotten sick. I don't know if you ever get to that point, but I think it's really helpful if we can be alert and detect those moments where we're like, okay, I need to make sure I'm getting some decent sleep now over these next few days. I need to make sure I'm getting some good nutrition and all the rest of it as well. But yes, anyway, let's get into how to create a faster metabolism and why that's even important. Because, well, if we have a better/faster metabolism, it simply means we burn more at the same weight potentially. So oftentimes we see two people, they're basically the same age, they, both train 3 times per week, maybe they roughly have the same history, and still one person burns more than the other. And what does that come down to? There's so many potential things. Of course, genetics do play a little bit of a role, but it's really not as big of a factor as other lifestyle habits, as the muscle mass that they have. That is a really, really big one. Or just in general, how active they are throughout the day, how much they have dieted in the past, what their diet consists of, even if it's the same amount of calories. So we're going to get into all of that today. So the first point that I want to make, or the first step rather in this journey, would be to start strength training, to start resistance training. Why is that going to be helpful for a faster metabolism? Well, there are numerous mechanisms behind that. The first one is actually on a hormonal level. So not just is that going to help us improve human growth hormone or testosterone, it really has an effect on literally all hormones, on your thyroid hormone, on your estrogen, on your progesterone, anything like that. And that in turn is going to affect the body in various ways. Of course, if we have improved thyroid levels, our metabolism, the thyroid really is sort of more or less our thermostat for when it comes to regulating the metabolism. And therefore, if we have better thyroid hormone levels and a healthier thyroid all in all, we are going to burn more at rest. The second effect that strength training has on your metabolism, and there are many, many more than what I'm going to be talking about, but still I've just kind of picked the ones that stood out to me the most. The second one is that it has a positive effect on hunger. So there are various studies that show that if people don't exercise at all, their hunger is somewhat dysregulated. There are also studies showing that if we have an incredibly high level of exercise, then hunger is going to be dysregulated also, meaning that we often can't actually catch up with everything, all the energy that our body would require. So if we exercise in a moderate way or in the right amount, let's say, then your body is simply going to be able to regulate its hunger better and kind of compensate for the additional movement in the best possible ways, meaning not sending you extreme hunger signals. Sometimes when we first start off with training, especially with endurance work, people tend to be really, really hungry, a lot hungrier than they were before, and sort of eat all their calories back, if not more. And of course, that's not ideal either. We don't really want that. But generally speaking, exercise, strength training in particular, is a really great way to regulate your hunger better and therefore consume the right amount of calories. And then the third point that I have picked out why we should be strength training in order to improve our metabolism is that muscle mass really is a more demanding tissue than fat mass. Granted, research shows that it doesn't burn a whole lot more calories than fat tissue at rest, but it's still a healthier tissue to have in your body than metabolically speaking, than fat tissue. So even just from the signals that it sends out, even just from the storage mechanism, so to speak, that it has, even just from the hydration level, like literally everything about muscle tissue is going to be more health conducive than fat tissue. Therefore, if we have higher muscle mass, we are going to have a healthier body overall, and our metabolism is going to be quote unquote faster, or we're going to burn more calories at rest than if we did not do any strength training, if we had less muscle mass. So this is point or step number one. Step number two, in order to increase your metabolism, would be to eat enough protein and to simply eat enough all in all. So why should we worry about protein when it comes to increasing our metabolic rate? Well, protein has a higher, what we call thermic effect of food than carbohydrates and fats, meaning your body requires more calories to break down protein than it does to break down carbs and fats. Carbs are still a little bit more metabolically active or have a higher thermic effect of food than fats, but still nowhere near as high as protein. I mean, carbs also really depends on what sort of carbs we're talking about. If it's a fibrous carb, or if it's a really low fiber and highly processed carb source. But let's focus on the protein. So higher thermic effect of food, that means automatically you're going to burn more calories / increase your metabolism, so to speak, by eating the same amount of calories from protein than if you did eat the same amount from fats and carbs. That should be an incentive to eat enough protein. Generally speaking, we want to aim for about 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, or if you're calculating in kilos, that would be 1.6 to 2.2 grams or 2.4 grams per kg of goal body weight or lean body weight, however you want to say that. But just generally speaking, we also want to make sure that we're eating enough. That is really one of the biggest mistakes I see for metabolic health in many of my clients, in the sense that they go from diet to diet to diet and constantly stress their metabolism, so that eventually their metabolism adapts to these low calorie intakes and sort of goes into standby mode. If you've listened to several of these live chats, you will have heard my analogy about the metabolism kind of being like a laptop. When you're in a maintenance phase, you're kind of plugged in, so to speak. So your laptop is running all these backup processes. It's nice and bright. It's functioning at its highest capacity. Whereas if you are in a dieting phase, at first you're unplugging your laptop, so it's all still doing the same things as when you are plugged in. But after a while, your body / your laptop is going to say, okay, we're going to stop these backup processes. Okay, we're going to dim the screen a little bit. Okay, we're no longer running these updates here. And that's exactly what happens with your body. If you are dieting for quite some time, it's going to be like, right, we're no longer optimizing hormonal health. We're no longer optimizing for energy output. When you're just standing or sitting, you're going to fidget a little bit less than usual. You might not sleep as well. So it's like all these things are kind of going into standby mode. And so that's not ideal. The great thing about metabolic adaptation, which is what we call it now, it used to be called metabolic damage. And then people realized, well, that makes it sound way too permanent. It's really not that permanent. Your metabolism is amazing. It can adapt very easily the other way as well, meaning if you actually feed your body for some time, and you regain that trust, you rebuild that confidence of your body, and like, hey, she's actually taking care of me. She's actually going to make sure that I have enough energy also for my hormones, also for just day-to-day living, for my emotional stress, for my mental stress, and so on, then it's going to eventually respond to a calorie deficit again. But at first, we need to restore that metabolic trust. So yes, let's say overall, just having dieted for a long period of time really is a big reason why people's metabolism becomes slow or is slow. So what we can do more specifically, and I think we've done several live chats on this when it comes to reverse dieting, but nonetheless, I want to get a little bit into it because it's a topic that is still very much misunderstood. So reverse dieting, there's also something called recovery diet. A recovery diet is more if you are intentionally wanting to put more weight on, which is often the case, let's just say, when someone has finished a bodybuilding show, a physique show, a photo shoot even, and they know, right, the leanness that I'm at right now, it's not just not sustainable, it's also not healthy long term. So I need to put on a little bit more body fat in order to get back to my metabolic health. So that's what we call a recovery diet, in which case we increase calories a lot quicker, in which case we anticipate the weight gain or some weight gain. Of course, it doesn't have to be a huge one, but a little bit, just with the primary aim of really restoring that metabolic health. Whereas with a reverse diet, it depends. Are we talking about a reverse diet because someone has dieted for such a long amount of time, in which case it could also be that we're expecting a little bit of weight gain within the process, or we're at least accepting it because we know it's necessary in the long run? Or are we talking about a reverse diet where someone has reached their weight loss goal and they now want to maintain this new level? In either case, we're usually talking about a very gradual increase of calories, normally through carbs and or fats, depending on how low either one of those were. Protein usually stays the same, granted that you've already got it somewhere around about 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. But just generally speaking, we would be talking about an increase through carbs and fats. In many cases, it can be as little as, let's say, 25 grams of carbs and maybe 5 or 10 grams of fats. And then we are just simply going to monitor your weight for the next week or two, and kind of aiming for that weight to continue to stay stable. And then we're going to do another increase. Again, if you've been dieting for a really long amount of time and your hormones are severely compromised, we might do that at twice the rate and do it either weekly in terms of the increase, or just make the increase larger. However, many clients that I work with, they're a little bit more mentally afraid of adding more food. So I have found that these small incremental increases work a lot better for me personally also. So I not necessarily a reverse diet after a dieting phase, but even just going into a lean gaining phase or a gaining phase, I struggle to bring calories up quickly, rapidly, in a large manner, more for my mental sake. And therefore, if I take baby steps and I would just literally increase by 100 or so and build that confidence within me of like, hey, look, the scale hasn't exploded yet just because you've added another 100 calories, that helps me and then builds the trust that next week it's okay to increase again. So yes, step number 2, to bring it back to the actual talk here, step number 2 in creating a faster metabolism is to not spend too much time dieting throughout the year, ideally, depending on how much body fat you have right now, but ideally not more than about half a year. Ideally, if you're already at somewhat lean levels where you're somewhat comfortable in your body, I would say, a quarter or a third of the year spent dieting, and the rest of the time reverse dieting or at maintenance or even in a gaining phase. That would be really, really beneficial for your metabolism and therefore your hormones, or vice versa. So yes, step number 3 in order to create a faster metabolism would be to improve your sleep. So by sleeping better, this is not something that's like directly related to your thyroid, only in the way of that it has a very positive effect on all kinds of hormones at any stage. So it again improves growth hormone, it improves testosterone, it improves your estrogen, progesterone, all these sorts of things, and therefore it's going to have a positive effect on how you burn calories, how you store calories, even your hunger. Again, you're gonna eat less, or if you're tracking regardless, you're just not gonna feel your cravings as much, and you're gonna feel a lot more satiated if you get sufficient high quality of sleep. And of course, good sleep also has a positive impact on your mood, and therefore you're probably not going to crave the same kind of crap or the same amount of alcohol, or just being frustrated and engaging in emotional eating. And therefore it has an indirect effect, in my opinion, on your metabolism as well. On top of that, and I'm sure we've all felt that, I certainly felt that last week when I came back from my trip with a sleep deficit. um, when we are slept well, we have much more of a drive to actually be active all day long, to gesture more as I'm doing here, to stand up, to not just slouch on the couch all day long, because we're just barely getting through the day. And therefore, we're actually like our non-exercise activity thermogenesis is going to be higher when we have a good sleep. And that, of course, affects your metabolism, because essentially the metabolism, and maybe I should have started with this, the metabolism is not just one thing. It's comprised of many, many things. So the metabolism itself is comprised of our basal metabolic rate. It's comprised of our thermic effect of food, of like how many calories are you burning when you're processing food. It's comprised of our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So all the things that are not intentional, like the gesturing, like the blinking, like how you posture yourself. So things that you don't necessarily think about. And then, of course, we also have the activity bucket in terms of our metabolism, which is all kinds of intentional exercise. So going for a walk, so going to do your training. And even there, even if you think, okay, well, regardless of how much I slept, I'm doing the same training program, so how is that going to affect my metabolism? Well, we probably also know that if we have slept well, we're able to put a lot more energy into our training, a lot more joy into our training, a lot more just in general, and the possibility for a PR generally is a little bit higher than if we're like dragging ourselves to the gym, just kind of going through the motions. So this is step number 3. Step 1 was actually starting to strength train in order to improve your metabolism. Step 2 was eating enough protein and eating enough all in terms of calories. Step number 3 was to get good sleep. So now we're going into step number 4, which kind of relates to the other steps as well, because I mentioned hormones already. But step number 4 is to balance your hormones as best as possible. And with that, again, like strength training has a positive effect, eating enough has a positive effect, sleeping has a positive effect. But there are other things that we can do in order to help improve our hormones or hormonal profile. For example, by taking good care of our liver. Our liver is what helps the body detox, so to speak, every single day, all the time. It helps make sure we get rid of toxins in our body, but also it helps make sure that we're getting rid of the hormones we no longer need, or just excess hormones and so on. And there are a few things that affect the liver, of course, what we take in, what we eat, our lifestyle, but also environmental toxins. So environmental toxins, what they do or what they have the capability of is permeating through our skin or us consuming them. And then they can actually mimic hormones and dock onto hormone receptors. So when that happens, the hormones that we have in our body, the actual hormones, they no longer have the receptor to dock onto. So let's just say if you picture hormone receptor like a parking lot, and the hormones are the vehicles that drive around, and each one has a designated parking lot where they deliver some information. Well, these endocrine mimicking chemicals, or the environmental toxins, they kind of look like they have the same license plate and they're the same vehicle, and they just park somewhere where they're not actually somewhere, and they're not supposed to be there. So now you have these other vehicles that are actually looking for their designated parking spot, just driving around, and they're like polluting, they're crowding up the space. So now we have this imbalance of like parking spots and hormones, and that's just not ideal. So longer story shorter, we want to make sure we're minimizing endocrine mimicking chemicals, and there are several things we can do in order to do that. So the first one is limiting plastic in our environment, and that includes your plastic cup that you drink out of, that includes any kind of Tupperware thing that you're heating up some food in, literally any plastic in our life. We kind of want to minimize and slowly fade out. There is no harsh judgment or like, hey, you need to get rid of everything in your household by tomorrow and replace it with glassware, with stainless steel, blah, blah, blah. No, that's unrealistic. But next time you want to replace something, just purchase the stainless steel cup instead of the plastic cup, perhaps. The second P stands for pesticides. So pesticides, most people will be familiar with that, is what's being sprayed on most sort of commercial fruit and vegetables in order to get rid of some of the pesticides, or of the pests, I guess. And some people think now that means that they have to purchase everything organically in order to avoid these pesticides. Well, that's not actually true. And I've mentioned this on this channel before also. But there's actually a group which is called the Environmental Working Group, and they bring out a list of things every single year where they have assessed, okay, what foods or what produce is actually highly laden with pesticides, and which foods or produce is not actually worth purchasing organically. So they've called that the Dirty Dozen, so 12 types of produce which really are very, very heavily laden with pesticides and are probably worth purchasing organically if you can. And they've also made that list of the clean 15. So 15 foods like bananas, like avocados, that you really don't necessarily need to purchase organically, because there's not actually a difference between those organic ones and the commercial ones. So I highly recommend checking it out. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. And the third P stands for parabens, and that's usually present in commercial skincare, cleaning products, that kind of stuff. So same like with the plastic, I would just recommend trying to phase out commercial ones gradually, and purchasing some high quality organic skincare and cleaning products. Again, I'm going to put a couple of brands in the show notes, and maybe you find this helpful. Now, that's not all that we can do in order to support our liver and thyroid. One thing which I'm a huge fan of is including cruciferous vegetables into your day at least once per day, like 100, 200 grams. This really depends on how much you can tolerate as well, because some people's gut doesn't tolerate as much in terms of cruciferous vegetables. You might be a little bit more bloated. You might feel like it's triggering SIBO or leaky gut or anything like that. So what I would say on that front, instead of thinking, oh, I can't eat cruciferous vegetables at all, experiment with how much you can tolerate, because sometimes people that follow a low FODMAP diet, they can have like 100 grams of the florets of broccoli, but when it comes to 150, or if you include the stems, they get really, really bloated. Same with Brussels sprouts or cauliflower or kale or anything like that. So just see how much you can tolerate, and also in what form. Because, for example, eating broccoli raw in a salad is a very different story than if you've cooked it nicely. Not overcooked. We don't want to, fade out any kind of color and get rid of all the good micronutrients. No, but you should cook it well. So yes, that's another way to support our liver, of course, staying hydrated. But one other thing we haven't actually talked about, which kind of also goes into step number 2 of eating enough protein, eating enough calories overall, is also eating enough healthy fats. Healthy fats, or fats in general, help our body produce hormones. And therefore, if we're not consuming a diet that contains sufficient fat, so for most women, that might be like a minimum of 40 grams consistently. Like if there's a day here or two, or even a few weeks where you're eating less than that, you'll be fine. But if you're constantly eating a very, very low fat diet, your hormones are probably going to suffer a little bit. For men, that might be anywhere, depending on your size, of course, but anywhere below 55 or 60 grams or so, I would say. So just bringing up those healthy fats consistently is going to have a positive benefit as well, through things like olive oil, like avocado, like nuts, nut butters, whole eggs. I'm a huge fan of whole eggs. You also get the choline and the iodine in there, which is going to support your thyroid and therefore your metabolism. So yes, that plays a big role, as well as just generally eating enough. That of course affects the hormones also, as we've already talked about. And then we also want to make sure that we're not over or under exercising. So by moving regularly but not too intensely all the time, we're also supporting our detoxification, just generally circulation, but of course also our body's sweating things out. And it's just such a great way to support our hormones as well. The last step in how to create a faster metabolism would be to walk after your meals, or to have a standing desk. So just generally to sit less. However you create that, if it is parking further away, if it is standing up once an hour at work and going to the bathroom, or walking to the water cooler, or just anything you can do to sit a little bit less is going to be beneficial. But this is sort of like one of the recurring themes of this live chat here. Walking after meals, so postprandial walks, are really, really, really beneficial for our digestion, for better blood sugar regulation, and therefore affecting our hunger later on, therefore affecting how we store or utilize whatever we've just consumed, therefore affecting our energy throughout the day, instead of having that afternoon crash at 3 p.m. where you need a triple espresso and a muffin to keep you going. So yes, a really big fan. Research actually shows that even just standing post meal really does benefit so much more than just sitting. We can also even feel that, I think, like if we have a larger meal and you keep staying seated afterwards, like your digestive tract is just going to be a little bit smaller, or not smaller, but more compressed than if you're standing and you have gravity helping you digest this quicker and better and process it better, especially if you eat things that are a little bit harder to process, like cruciferous vegetables, or like protein. I never know if people say cruciferous or cruciferous vegetables. Anyway, I'm gonna stick with both. Correct me or let me know how you pronounce them if you like. I'm gonna say cruciferous, perhaps in this case. But yeah, so that would be the 5th point. So I hope you've enjoyed my 5 ways or 5 steps to a faster metabolism. Once again, a reminder that we have our Happy Healthy Holiday Handbook. It's completely free. It's really with actionable steps towards how should I handle Thanksgiving? How should I handle food pushers? How should I handle the day off? How can I eat more mindfully? Those sorts of things. So I was hoping or intending to give you very actionable steps there. Of course, we also always love taking on new one-on-one clients. If you already want to get a head start on improving your body composition or your relationship with food before the new year, which is what I highly recommend because there's nothing magic about the 1st of January. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, to hopefully you found this helpful in whatever way, shape, or form. Let me know your thoughts in the comments or anything else that you want to share with me. I'm always happy to connect, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.